Welcome to the next video in our ESSA video series. I am Dr. Amy Boza, Director of ELA Standards and Move On When Reading. We are happy to share the next phase of our ESSA informative webinar series. You are watching video number 9, which concludes the video series. In this video, we will talk about how to look beyond curriculum and consider how evidence-based decision-making fits within a continuous improvement cycle. We are excited that you have decided to join us on your journey to become an ESSA investigator. Before we get started, let's take a few minutes to look back at what we've covered in this webinar series so far. In the introduction video, we introduced ESSA's focus on evidence-based activities, strategies, and interventions. In video 1, we talked about ESSA legislation and how it improves educational opportunities for students in Arizona. In video 2, we gave an overview of ESSA evidence levels using a Rel West video titled Understanding the ESSA Tiers of Evidence. We also provided 3 valuable tools for districts and school personnel to use when evaluating research, which can be found on our ESSA page and in the links in the YouTube description below. In video 3, we explained how effective evidence-based decision-making should be embedded within a continuous improvement framework. We presented a framework that is comprised of 5 main components that work together to guide and support improvement efforts with evidence-based decision-making at the heart. We also provided 6 tools to support you in developing an evidence-based decision-making approach. Links to these tools can be found on our ESSA page and in the links in the YouTube description below. In video 4, we outlined how to effectively use clearinghouses to help you select appropriate programs and interventions for the students you serve. 2 of the most common clearinghouses for educational research are Evidence for ESSA and What Works Clearinghouse. We also discussed where to look if you can't find specific studies on these clearinghouses. In video 5, we discussed ESSA's 4 tiers of evidence and how to rate an intervention's potential effectiveness to improve student outcomes in a district or school. We also provide an important tool to use when determining the evidence tier rating of an intervention for your school or district. In video 6, we introduced the full WestEd guide, a guide for states to strengthen their frameworks and supports aligned to the evidence requirements of ESSA, and discussed how to use Tool 5 in the guide to compare the evidence bases for more than one intervention. In video 7, we described how to use Tool 6 in the guide to compare how well different evidence-based interventions, strategies, policies, practices, or programs that target the same problem or issue are aligned with the context of a specific state, district, or school. In video 8, we shared about how we learned about ESSA and the connections to Arizona malware legislation. We hope that you have found these topics useful in your efforts to support districts and schools to evaluate research. We encourage you to go back to this video content if you have any questions or need further clarification on certain issues.
As we wrap up our video series, we want to encourage district and school personnel to look beyond curriculum when making decisions about interventions. Evidence-based decision-making should be part of a continuous improvement cycle that is constantly in motion to improve educational opportunities for your students. A continuous improvement process starts with a problem rather than the solution. It includes addressing a discrete issue or problem by systematically testing potential solutions while tracking well-defined and measurable goals. The process is meant to be iterative. Data are collected, analyzed, and discussed frequently so that adjustments can be made to the intervention or program, and then data are collected and analyzed once again. In addition, the scale of the initial effort often begins small and expands over time as the intervention is refined. Using this process, schools and districts often start with a pilot intervention or activity and expand it as the fit to local conditions is better understood. The tools presented in this webinar series allow district and school personnel to work through the process of informing, selecting, planning, implementing, and analyzing to sustain improvement for their students.
We also want to encourage districts and schools to apply what we've described in the videos to your daily decisions about programs and strategies. For example, when you begin to review strategies, not just curriculum, what should you look for? What questions should you ask? Why should you look beyond curriculum? The What Works Clearinghouse Practice Guides are useful resources that can help with these considerations. For example, this practice guide provides recommendations for teaching foundational reading skills to students in kindergarten through 3rd grade. It highlights recommendations, such as the 3rd recommendation to teach students to decode words, analyze word parts, and write and recognize words, which has strong evidence and a Tier 1 strong evidence rating under ESSA evidence standards.
Another What Works Clearinghouse Practice Guide published by IES recommends specific steps that teachers, reading coaches, and principals can take to successfully improve reading comprehension for young readers. For example, the first recommendation is teaching students how to use reading comprehension strategies with strong evidence for the effectiveness of the practice. Based on the definitions of the evidence tiers based on ESSA, this is a Tier 3 or promising strategy.
Another What Works Clearinghouse Practice Guide published by IES helps educators identify struggling readers and implement evidence-based strategies to promote their reading achievement. For example, screening all students for potential reading problems at the beginning and middle of the year shows moderate evidence and
Finally, a guide published by the Connecticut Department of Education describes evidence-based practices by grade level with rationales and their rating of the ESSA evidence level. These are all sources for strategies and practices that have an evidence base. This can be helpful to complement the evidence-based programs and curricula you already have in place. Links to these resources can be found on the ADE website and directly on our YouTube channel.
Thanks again for joining us on your journey to become an ESSA investigator. Please do reach out to any of us should you have any questions or if you would like more information. Thank you so much.